Hello and welcome to day 81 of Anatomy Physiology. This is our last day of new information, so we're really winding down here. So you can see here it says start new warm-ups in whatever form you'll turn them in, and we'll turn them in on day 83. So getting down to the wire here. All right, so we've got our positive moment picture, so reflect silently on a positive moment. And then again, continuing on with warm-ups, make sure you get those turned in there. So yeah, the 83 will turn them in, so coming at the end there. So, all right, so class schedule, our business schedule that we're looking at here is we're looking at day 81, reproductive system, part 2. So again, this is the second half, the information on the reproductive system. Um, so today we're going to focus on the menstrual cycle, pregnancy, and developmental aspects. And then we look here, so we're looking at Tuesday the 19th and Wednesday the 20th there. After that, we'll have 2 days of review here, 1 day per class, and then 2 days of review or 1 day per class here, with the 28th being Royal Day. And then finals starting the 29th. Science final is June 1st, so it's going to come up pretty quick there. Okay, so on assignments, we've got MyLab and Mastering for 14, 15, and 16. We've got the urinary system that we've been working on, and then the anatomy reproductive system that we're working on. So coming up towards the end there. And after today, really the only thing left to do is begin reviewing for the anatomy physiology final. Okay, so again, there's the Unit 6 online test rewrites. I've only had a few of those turned in, less than I thought there'd be, so make sure you get those turned in, and we'll do what we can on there. Yeah, looking at the information there. All right, so objectives, we looked at these last time, same ones. Identify male reproductive system, pathway of sperm, exocrine and endocrine products of the testes, relate sperm structure to function, and we looked at female reproductive system, identify the regions of the uterus, and then the endocrine and exocrine products of the ovary there. Okay, so I will mention a little bit of information about the activities today. So some of these just depend on looking at the figures in the lab book, and then I do have some links to a video for sperm, and then we'll look at some microscopic images for the ovaries there. So this is for sperm, and if you want to look at the video for human sperm to kind of see how they work, the idea is that they've got that head with the acrosome on it, and that's where the nucleus is. They've got the mid piece, and then they've got the tail, and mostly the mitochondria are kind of found in this region to power the movement of that tail and propel the sperm. Then we looked at activity. We'll look at activity 4, the microscopic structure of the ovary. There's a lot there. I would recommend just doing a search for ovary histology labeled. That would give you images of the cells of the ovary, and you can see kind of the different follicles and oocytes kind of as they go through different stages of maturation there. Okay, so as we mentioned, part 2, menstrual cycle, pregnancy, and developmental aspects. We'll split it into 3 parts for today's notes here. So again, reproduction, how, why, what's kind of going on is what we're dealing with there. So menstrual cycle. So this is cyclical changes in a layer called the endometrium, which is the middlemost layer of the uterus. Typically about 28 days in length, although that can vary. It's regulated by cyclic production of estrogens and progesterone by the ovaries. So it's those hormones that are produced. There's 2 other hormones that we have called FSH, which is follicle stimulating hormone, and LH, which is luteinizing hormone, which come from the anterior pituitary, and they regulate the production of those estrogens and progesterone by the ovaries. Ovulation typically occurs about midway through, so day 14, but again, this cycle of 28 days can vary considerably depending on the woman and kind of what's going on. Stress and other things can change that. So stages of the menstrual cycle, we have 3 parts: the menstruation phase, the menstrual phase, the proliferation phase, and the secretory phase. That's broken down here on the right. You can see this image. So menstruation is when a woman's having her period. Proliferation is when we're kind of building up the endometrial layer and getting ready for ovulation. Here you can see up above what's kind of happening with the stuff happening inside the follicles of the ovary. And then in the middle here, it's showing kind of what's happening with those 4 hormones: progesterone, estrogen, LH luteinizing hormone, and FSH, the follicle stimulating hormone. And then the last part is that secretory phase. So you can see that there's kind of some more changes in the hormonal level, which brings them back to kind of what they started there at that cycle there. And again, you can kind of see what's happening with the corpus luteum after the egg has been ovulated. All right, so breaking it down a little bit further, 1 through 5, this is where the functional layer, the endometrium, is slowed off. So this is where we're breaking off that part. We've spent our time kind of building it up in the potential that there's a fertilized egg that can implant. But if there's not, we don't want to keep that around because that's really highly vascularized, a lot of nutrient flow in there. So if bacteria gets in, it's a place that's really ripe for bacterial infection. So we want that not to happen. So we kind of get rid of that. Bleeding occurs typically 3 to 5 days, but that can vary also, shorter to longer. And the amount of bleeding that occurs can also vary. All right, and then ovarian hormones, or this is when at the lowest level, kind of all of that. And then by day 5, the ovarian follicles, which you can see up here, are producing more estrogen. So you can see estrogen starting to come up right around here, right? And it starts to build up and build up and build up, and it's signaling the body, okay, we're going to go ahead and finish the menstrual cycle and move into the proliferation phase. Okay. So next is the proliferation phase. So this is the regeneration of that endometrium. It's repaired, thickened, as we mentioned, becomes well vascularized. You can see the blood vessels kind of growing in there. Estrogen levels start to rise as a result of the follicle stimulating hormone. And ovulation occurs in the ovary at the end of the stage. So proliferant phase all the way up to here. And then this luteinizing hormone is kind of one of those key factors that really signals, okay, we're kind of reaching that point where we're going to begin ovulating there. Okay. And then finally, 15 through 28 is the secretory phase. Levels of progesterone rise and increase. The progesterone, if we go back here, is blue. So levels of progesterone rise and increase the blood supply to the endometrium, which becomes more vascular still. And then the endometrium increases in size and ready for implantation. And then we'll talk about what happens if that does or does not occur. Okay. All right. So if that does not occur, then the corpus luteum degenerates as luteinizing hormones, blood levels decline, and it brings us back to kind of that start with follicle stimulating hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and luteinizing hormones. But if fertilization does occur, then the embryo starts producing hormones that cause the corpus luteum to continue producing its own hormones. And remember, if we jump back, the corpus luteum, what it was doing is it was keeping, let me go back here, it was keeping the endometrium from being slowed off. So the embryo is essentially saying keep the endometrium in place so that it can still remain viable and continue to grow. Okay. And that gets us to the end of the first part, and we'll pause and we'll pick up for part 2. All right, and take a quick stretch break.